Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Clarity and Confidence TV. I am so excited about today's guest. I have Zenica Chatman with me, and she has two hustles. On the side, she is a coach, but her day job, yes, she works full-time as a marketing manager for a utility company, but I didn't do her justice at all. So Zenica, welcome. And I would love for you just to tell everybody more about you. What do you want them to know? Tell us about your job, your hobbies, if you got any pets, your family, anything you want people to know.
Well, you hit the nail on the head with one thing. I like to call it, I have a main check and a side check. So I am a full-time marketing manager for a utility company, but I am also a life coach, and I help women recover from workplace bullying, reclaim their power so that they can maximize their impact both at work and beyond. And I have been doing that for at least a little bit, or a year or so, kind of double duty in it. But it's certainly been very rewarding, and I'm super excited to talk to you today.
I know, like my stomach is doing flip-flops right now because we're going to talk about all of that. But I want to ask you the very first question I ask everybody. And what is your definition of true confidence?
So my definition of true confidence is really just courage over fear. I use that a lot in my coaching practice, but it's understanding that you may not always get it right, but you can't go wrong at being you. So just showing up in your true, authentic self, putting your own personal courage over the fear and going for it anyway.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And courage over fear. And lots of times I talk about, how can you choose confidence over conformity? Like, how
Yes.
can you choose yourself over just kind of falling and sleepwalking into what everyone else is doing? And so I'd love to hear you talk about how in your practice you help women, or even just in your day-to-day role as a leader in your organization, how do you help women choose courage over fear? Say more about that.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we talk a lot about is really just asking ourselves the tough questions. I think a lot of times, going back to your point of kind of conformity, we will put what we're conforming to ahead of what we want. And so we'll say, oh, I can't do that thing because it costs too much money. But asking yourself the really tough question of, does it? And really going through that process of, do you want that thing? What is the ultimate benefit to you? And really pulling back those layers of getting to, wait, I'm really just afraid. Like, I'm afraid to spend this money because somebody told me that I wasn't good with money, but I'm great. I'm actually great with money. I've got so much in savings. And if I wanted to buy this thing that has the big, scary price tag, I actually have the ability to do that, right? So I think we really start from a place of peeling back the layers, asking ourselves the tough questions. I am kind of a tough coach. I don't really let my clients shy away and give me the basic surface level stuff. So we really dig deep and ask ourselves the tough questions and peel back the
So
layers of.
what are your favorite tough questions? Are you willing to, so you shared one of them. Are you willing to share any of your other good ones?
Well, this. It depends on the situation most of the time, but a lot of times I'll just ask my clients flat out of, you're saying a lot, but what are you not saying to me?
Ooh, that's good. I
Mhm.
like that one. And I hope everybody watching just wrote that down. And maybe if it's not, Zenica sitting in front of you, it could be just asking that question to your journal. Okay, you're saying a lot, you're telling your friends all the things, right? But tell me in this journal, what are you not saying? Like, what are you scared? I was asked this question once, and I love this question. What are you scared could be true? I was like, oh,
That's
like
a
if
motiv-
that doesn't get out all the heebie-jeebies, I don't know what does.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. So say more about your coaching business, because as we're filming this today, you are currently getting ready to run a challenge. And I think the challenge in and really when I say challenge, I mean, it's an educational opportunity. It really kind of describes what you do as a coach. Do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, so the challenge is called the Unbreakable Challenge. So it's 3 days to create an unbreakable, unshakable attitude in even the worst work environment. And so really what we're doing over the course of that 3 days is we're bringing awareness to the issue of workplace bullying and workplace abuse, because so many times people are just in denial that they're even experiencing that. So we're going to walk through that little bit of what it actually looks like. But we're also going to talk through, and I've been saying, we're not going to stay in that place, right? Because for me, I had to come to an awakening and an awareness of what was happening to me. But then we're going to start to do some of that deep work of moving forward. And so we're going to do some work on creating that mindset that you need so that you build that resilience so that ultimately you can make the decision of what the outcome is going to be for your specific situation.
Oh my gosh, I love this. And I'm going to send everyone who's watching this to all your social media, but are you willing to give us a few clues first on how we might awaken to some bullying in the workplace? What are some things that maybe just some surface level things we should take note of?
Yeah, so I think for me, kind of one of the basic stuff is just knowledge, right? Of what it is and understanding that it goes a little bit deeper of, maybe I just don't like my boss and my boss doesn't like me, but it's really repeated negative behavior that is humiliating, demeaning by an employer or a group of employees towards another employee.
Mhm.
The effects of that can be anywhere. It can be financially devastating because oftentimes people will leave a role as a result of bullying without really having another opportunity lined up. But there's tons of psychological effects that can happen. So I think for me, just some basic awareness of what it is, how can it impact you as an individual, how can it impact my business, is really a good place to start. So I think that's where we're going to start, of just kind of helping people see that, you're not crazy, because that's what they tell us, right? That's what they tell women, like, oh, you're just being sensitive. And it's like, no, you're not.
And one of the things I think you could be saying without saying, it's even giving women knowledge of what gaslighting looks like, because lots of times a bully will use gaslighting, and you can Google the term gaslighting. But really, it's just they try to smooth over their actions to make you question the reality on if it happened. Is that something that you also help women point out? Do you see that too?
I do see that, and we do work through that, because oftentimes the gaslighting, it comes from what I call the structure. So it comes from the corporate structure and the corporate entity that will tell you, well, that really was just being done because they're trying to make you a better leader. It's just his or her leadership style.
Yes.
So yes, we definitely hit on that.
Awesome. So if you had someone who was sitting in front of you who experienced workplace bullying, what would be one piece of advice you would give her? How would you help her kind of really reclaim her confidence or choose courage over fear?
Yeah, yeah. So I think one it would go back to kind of the ultimate question of, once we've worked through some of the points of what it is asking them to come and sit to the realization that that's happened to them,
Mhm.
right? And can they even accept that first? And so once we get them to a place of realization that, wow, that happened to me,
Mhm.
um, then we move into a place of, so what do you want now?
Mhm.
And it's not about your job per se, but it's, what do you really want,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm. You and I were talking offline before I hit record, and you talked a little bit about your vision for women. Do you want to say
Mhm.
more about that, about what you wish or hope for in the world?
Yeah, for sure. So part of my coaching practice, and one area that we focus on, is fun. It seems very simplistic, but especially when you're coming out of a situation where work, right? Work has been difficult. Work has been toxic. The area where you spend the most time in has just been difficult, and there's a lot of confidence and self-esteem issues as a result of that. We have to get back to a place, ladies, of enjoying life and having fun. We're so busy checking off the boxes, and oftentimes in my coaching practice, even pushing aside what we've experienced, that we don't make time, for ourselves. I was coaching a client of mine a couple of weeks ago, and I asked her, I said, what do you want? And she said, oh, I want to get this thing done, and I'm building the business, and so I got to do all these things. And we came back to it, and I asked her again what she wanted, and she started listing off all the things. And I finally had to say, you recognize I have asked you twice in this coaching session of what you want,
Mhm.
automatically go to your to-do list.
Mhm.
So we have to get to a place where we go from, God, I don't even know, and we can't answer that question, to where if somebody asks you, what do you want? What do you want your life to look like? You can rattle that thing off the same way we do our to-do list, right?
Mhm.
We know exactly what we want.
Exactly. Well, and this is fascinating because I think intuitively we would all agree with you. Yes, I need to have more fun, right? But what do you think keeps women from having the fun that they deserve? Because I think we all kind of know we need to have more fun, but we're like, oh, you just don't understand. I ain't got time for that. What do you hear?
Well, you use a key word there. Most of us don't think we deserve to
Mhm.
have fun.
Mhm.
And in the case of that client, she actually said it. She said, I didn't feel like I deserved that,
Mhm.
because we don't feel like we're working hard enough. It's crazy that we have this whole, we are doing all the things, but it's still not enough for us to earn fun and earn the freedom to have fun.
Mhm.
So we have to get back to a place, I think, where we normalize fun. I know it sounds crazy to say that we normalize fun, but we do. And we stop judging our girlfriends for like, oh, you see, she's taking 5 days off. They must have a ton of money. Like, oh, she's taking 5 days off. Good for her. Send
Yeah.
me pictures.
Exactly. I need to schedule my 5 days off. Like instead of judging, it should just be clues for us to say, maybe that envy is telling me where I need to take my next step a little bit.
That's right.
Exactly. Exactly. So tell me about a decision that you made in your career that was brave. Maybe it was kind of unpopular, but you did it to honor your true self.
Yeah. So it probably relates to my bullying experience. There came a time in that experience where I had to stand up for myself,
Mhm.
and it felt very uncomfortable. It was over the course, I think at this point, it had been like 5 or 6 months of just the constant, ongoing, everyday humiliation and constant, like, you're not doing anything right. And it was a very small project. I mean, I remember it was a very teeny tiny project, but I just remember saying, if this is the thing that we've got to have the come to Jesus moment about, then this is going to be the thing. And I remember some of the words that were exchanged were just very much like I was laying it all out there saying, here is all of the things that I have experienced in the last 5 months, and I'm not sure why, but they are extremely unfair.
Mhm.
And I have to speak out on them. And we're not going to move forward in a successful working relationship if you continue to do these things.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you're giving me goosebumps because I'm trying to put myself into your shoes, and maybe women are too, or maybe there's women watching this who are like, that just hit them like a ton of bricks because they're like, oh my gosh, that's me.
Mhm.
Gave you the courage that day when you woke up and you're like, enough is enough? Like, did you have like a mantra, or was it just kind of the energy had built up, or like, what gave you the courage to just then decide today is the day I'm having that conversation? Because I think a lot of women feel that way, but to me, the courage to summon the courage to actually speak that out loud to the person who's doing it would be huge for a lot of people. So I'd love to hear more about what gave you that power that day.
Yeah, so I will be honest. So I am a woman of faith, and so throughout that entire time, I was studying Ephesians.
Mm-hmm.
I was studying the whole notion of when they talk about putting on your full armor.
Mm-hmm.
And so every day I kind of had this visualization of like, I'm a soldier and I'm suited up and I've got my gear on, just kind of like metaphorically, and protecting my spirit, protecting my mind and my emotions. And I remember feeling that day like this is going to be the day. Like I remember walking into the office, and it was like, I don't know what is going to happen, but I feel like this is the day that
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do battle.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in that moment where she called me into the office and I sat down, and it was like this voice saying, now is the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, and I want to be clear that I don't necessarily recommend having it out with a manager or having it out with a supervisor, But I do think that just like we teach our kids when they're experiencing bullying, there comes a time when you do have to stand up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I owned all of the consequences, right? Because I was already in a really bad situation. So I also knew that speaking up could be really, it could go really, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
So just remember that when you finally decide to make that decision, you have to own all the consequences that come along with it.
Yeah. How did you choose your words? Like, what advice would you give women? Because I'm sure that you didn't come into that conversation just lackadaisical, like, I'm just going to tell, her what's going on, right? What advice would you give women to speak their truth while probably trying to just keep inside everything that's just burning maybe? Does that make sense? Like, how did you choose your words, your tone, your approach? Say more about that.
So again, from a spiritual sense, I don't know that I actually chose the word. So I'll be honest there. But speaking specifically to the situation I was in, I kind of knew the system a little bit, right? So, and that's something else that I kind of coach women through is you got to kind of know the system. And so I had been doing kind of my own documentation. I had my own log running. I had spoken with a good friend of mine who was an attorney. So I did have some of kind of the right words given to me, but keeping in mind, this wasn't like I didn't just go in there and just like word vomit, right? So really taking the time over several weeks of if they say this, what will I do? So I had already kind of started to role play of when this thing starts to go really, really south to the point where I know I'm going to have to defend myself, how would I do that? And how do I do that in a way that is diplomatic, if you will, and still a little bit professional? And so I kind of chose my words based on that. And I always try to keep it from a place of, this is how this situation is making me feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I owned what I felt. I tried to be open to maybe something that I was missing, but we'll be honest. When people are being work jerks, they know they're being work jerks.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably wasn't as gracious as I should have been. Yeah, I would say, I didn't have that conversation in a place where I felt like I couldn't control myself.
Got it.
And got to the place where I felt like, you know what? She is about to get Z from the block. I said, you know what? I am no longer able to have this conversation in a way that's going to be respectful of you and the position that you have in this organization. So if you would like to continue, I would like to have another person present, preferably someone from HR.
Yeah. I love how you just were very clear about your boundaries and you said some magic words. This will no longer continue in this work relationship. Gosh, I love that. And now what people may not notice, and I was smiling when you were talking about your plan, is something that you can know about both Zenica and I is we are INTJs in the Myers-Briggs profile, and we are Enneagram 5s. We're like soul sisters.
And I just hurt.
Yeah, you just found out. And so your approach is very strategic. And that is a gift of both of those types, is that I think folks can learn from, if we're going to toot our own horns here, is when I've also had difficult conversations, I've never just kind of walked into it with like a punch. I've reversed engineered it, or I've masterminded it, as you said. So when you said you studied the system, my heart was like, girl, I know what you mean about studying the system. And then if this, then that, and then they say this. And then the other thing too, I think that's really helpful is you logged facts. So you weren't just like going in there, yes, you were explaining how you feel, but you're like, and I have the data. And I think that very heart and head-based approach is something that, many of us can learn from when we're looking to have a hard conversation. But as a girl of faith myself, I want to ask the most important question is, do you have a favorite author for studying the armor of God?
I don't. I'll have to find the book that I used when I was going through that time, because I wasn't even searching. It was just kind of, I was like, you know what? I want a study piece. And it was just a simple, like, read these verses, answer these questions. And so it wasn't even something that
Mhm.
I think I could have put together. It just all kind of happened.
Yeah. So two of my favorites I'll share you guys can check out is Priscilla Shire. She has a whole video study. Are you familiar with Priscilla?
Yes.
I love her. And I went through her book study of Armor of God, and I went through it after I called off my wedding. And so for something, I just wanted to call back to this point, because if you are a woman of faith and you're looking for something to give you just incredible grounding and power and just recognizing your worth and how you can move through life just totally embodied and empowered, gosh, that is just an amazing, amazing resource. And I know that Joyce Meyer talks a lot about it as well. So I didn't want to just skim over that fact, because I think that study and just that section of Ephesians is just so powerful in stepping into your own power. And tell me what I've missed here. So.
No, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. Like I said, if you the word is living, right? So I took it and I wore that armor every day. And so I always just felt very suited up. And so I think that kind of became a mantra for me as well. Like when I would walk in the door, I'd be like, you know what? I'm suited up. Like I'm ready.
I love it. And I talk a lot about confidence mantras in my practice. So Stacy Bloom is a neuroscientist, and she talks about how repetition, even just in our minds of like a power statement or a mantra, it shows that it helps rewire your brain for more confidence. And so when you go into these high stakes situations, you carry in the energy of confidence. And so when I hear you say suit up, I'm like, oh, like that's a good one. But it's also, suiting up, not in a way that's gonna overpower anybody. It's really suiting up so you can speak your truth and speak your piece and do it in a way that aligns with your values, which is everything I heard you say in your story. So that's
Another thing I want to say to that too, Kelly, is suiting up sometimes too. It also helps you to know when to be quiet. Because that particular instance was not the only time I'd been bullied in my career. And I remember very distinctly another conversation, and this woman, she was berating me, and I was the manager at that time, and she was berating me. She was going on and on and on in front of like leadership and HR. And this is old me, before pre-Jesus, BC Zenica. And
Yeah.
and I heard this voice say, "This is not about you." And I sat back.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, other people who could address the situation were able to address it in a way that there was nothing I could do.
Mm-hmm.
Like it had to be addressed that way for the problem to be solved. So I think sometimes suiting up also helps you to know and hear that voice that will tell you when to be quiet and when to speak up.
Oh, I love it. And it's just, yes. And it's a still small voice that no one else can tell you. Like, I don't think you or I could sit here and give people guidelines for how they should speak up or stay silent, but really knowing and trusting your intuition and your still small voice. Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because you're right. Not everything is going to need to be fixed and addressed by you. And sometimes you're just as powerful by not saying anything at all. Oh my gosh. So what advice would you give women leaders who are trying to take their bravest next career step? What's some of your favorite wisdom?
So I think I would be remiss if I didn't say, think it through.
Mm-hmm.
So think it through first and do it afraid.
Mm-hmm. I love it. We're never going to feel ready.
We're never going to feel ready.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you just have to hop right in. I actually came across some research from Dr. Miller. He's a neuroscientist out of MIT. And he was saying that, like, well, I'll just give you an example. So when I get on stage and speak, I only have the first 3 minutes of my speech memorized, because I can't memorize the whole thing. That's impractical and it stresses me out. But what he's saying is that if you just kind of memorize the first 3 to 5 minutes, like you don't feel confident, but that's like an action of confidence. So if you go in and you just kind of start with what you have memorized, your adrenaline will take over in your flow, and then the feelings of confidence. So actions of confidence come first, feelings of confidence come later. So
I love that. Yeah,
that's amazing. So something else that we were talking about offline that I want to make sure that we leave with is, I would love for you to leave women with the wisdom about seasons and what we can all learn from seasons and who you learned that from, because it is just so wise and so wonderful.
Yeah, so I was telling Kelly that I am the daughter of a gardener. So my father, I grew up in the South, so very long history of gardening there. He's a certified master gardener, but
Woo!
yeah, he's official. So, but he always teaches me seasons and what each season means as it relates to gardening. And there's a time to sow and a time to reap and all of that. We know that from a biblical perspective. And we were having a really good conversation last night about what does the season of fall mean, and he told me that fall is really about doing the work to prepare for the next season, to prepare to plant for the next season. Um, but one of the things that I take away from what he talks about is, if you look at the world and you move, the world moves in rhythms, right? So there's seasons and there's flow to the earth and how we get our seasons. If you look at our body, there's a heartbeat, there's a rhythm to that and how it moves and how it works and how everything moves in relation to its season and in rhythm with God. And so I really am starting to work from a place of moving in the rhythm of God and in the rhythm of the season. So when I get certain ideas that come into me, I act on them right away so that I can stay in the rhythm. And it's been really interesting to just see how when you move with that rhythm, how things are starting to line up and shape up for me. So
Mhm.
that's kind of the gist of the season. So I don't tend to kind of speak in like time anymore. So I don't say like, oh, at this time in my life, I'm always kind of now transitioning to speak from seasons, from this particular season of my
Oh my
life.
gosh. The one liner that like is sitting in my heart right now is stay with the rhythm. Like
Mhm.
something in me just lit up. And I hope it did for everybody listening because I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, stay in the rhythm, honor the things that arise for you. And if
Yeah.
I had to give women a challenge today, it's also something that you said, this is fall, on its original release. And you said that fall is a time to prepare. And I love that because I think sometimes we're in a culture of immediate gratification, but I like your words of what are you doing today to prepare yourself, even if, because this is the hardest part, even if you aren't getting an immediate result.
Mhm.
That is so powerful. So I hope women are challenged today with, of so many nuggets of wisdom, choosing courage over fear, honoring their rhythm. How are they preparing and sowing things and investing in themselves, which I think is key, knowing that they may not see the benefits for a few months. So thank you so much for your time today. I've taken away so many things. I feel like as soon as we get off, I'm like, I got to write down all these one liners and go back and replay. So where can women find you? Because that your challenge will have already been over, but I'm sure they can go back and see stuff from the past. So tell me, what's the best place that people can find you? Because I know they're going to want to look you up.
Yeah. So the best place to find me, so I'll give you my website. It's zenicachatman.com. But the best place to find me and hang out with me is on Instagram. So I am Z_Chatman with a T. And I am always kicking it on IG. So best
Yes,
two
and
places.
she is kicking it on IG because I see her there all the time, and I'm like, so good, so cool. And you have the best little 2-minute videos. So if you ever just need like a 2-minute pep talk, and it's like, and it's not even, it's like on just a variety of topics that I guess I always feel like when I watch them, I'm like, I didn't know I needed that, which is the best thing because you watch it and you're like, yeah. So you're amazing. Thank you so, so much for spending the time. Everyone, go follow Zenica. She is an endless source of wisdom and pick me ups. And I just cannot wait to see your coaching journey continue to unfold. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for letting me be here. I appreciate you so much.
Likewise.